down these corners. A great descent by Bettini, a straighter portion of it just now.
And I'll tell you, he's taking time out of the two climbers behind, and he knows he has to get time now to have any chance at the climb. It starts very hard. He'll cross the town of Aix, and then he'll make a left turn, and then he'll start the climb up. But he is showing terrific skill coming down here, and our motorbike is having quite a problem holding him and keeping up with him on these sharp bends. There is the town of Aix, way below us, by the way. This camera is situated from the helicopter, and there is the final approach as they come off the descent into the town. Here we are over to the right, still quite a few more bends before we drop down to the level of Aix, and on the opposite side of the town is the Plateau de Bonascre, and that is where we're going. Well, it's where we're sitting right now. It's where they're coming to us.
Beautiful piece of cornering there. You see how he used all of the road. He moved across to the right-hand side, cut right across the apex, kept his knee out as far as possible, just like a motorbike rider would descend. He's now, as we look at a completely different aerodynamic style here of Cardenas, losing awful amounts of time on this descent.
Contrasting styles on the way down, and unlike a motorcycle rider, let's say, who might have the low center of gravity of having the engine and gearbox down there between his ankles, these guys are very high no matter how far off the saddle they get. We'll be right back to France. Welcome back through those snaking switchbacks that we saw earlier as Paolo Bettini used them in a masterful display of descending. There is Bettini, tête de la course, head of the course, racing through the streets of Aix-les-Thermes before he begins the long uphill climb to the finish. Now this marks the first time Aix-les-Thermes has hosted the finish of a Tour de France stage. Although, as I mentioned earlier, it once hosted lots of travelers from distant places when it was the site of a hospital for warriors injured on the Crusades, going back to the 13th century or so. Thousands of fans by the roadside, as we've come to expect on the Tour de France. I'm Bob Barsha with Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen. There's a beautiful view from overhead. Right now, let's get back to Phil and Paul.
The red top roofs of Aix-les-Thermes, and in it now the leader of the Tour de France today, and here he is. He's about to say goodbye as fast as possible. You'll catch the name of Jar. There it is on the road. There the man the French want to win today. He doesn't live very far away, but at the moment they're seeing Paolo Bettini of Italy on the lead with 9 kilometers to go.
Look at this crowd, it's absolutely remarkable. The road was closed down pretty early this morning, so the majority of these people actually had to walk up to the summit of this mountain here. This man now has only got to try and survive, but I don't think he will, because Felix Cardenas, the Colombian rider, is an exceptional climber. At the moment, the race situation is Bettini, followed by a lone chaser, Echavarria, followed by another lone chaser, Felix Cardenas, and then 3 men containing his own teammate, Michele Bartoli. The main field are still around about 4 minutes behind. This is Cardenas in the streets of the town now. He's got his helmet off right now. The team car will come up alongside. Many of these riders not wanting to wear their team helmets in the mountains, because although it is very dangerous on the descents, it is also very hot when you go uphill, and he now has not got to go down any more mountains in today's stage. He has only got to do one thing, and that is ride uphill. You can just see David Echavarria a little further up the road here, and very shortly I would expect Echavarria to be caught by the flying Colombian Cardenas, who at the moment is only about 5 or 10 seconds behind him.
This is a huge effort for these two riders. This is their big day here. A winner in Saint-Flour and Pau in the past in the Tour de France. Echavarria knows what it's like to win. Cardenas has never had such an honour, and he is the best climber in the best position now, and this would be a great reward for the Kelme team, because one of their best riders not here this year, Javier Ochoa, he won a stage of the Tour de France last year, and there's been a crash there, and that was beyond the descent. One rider is down, and he's in the shadows, unfortunately, but it looks like a Cofidis rider has overshot that corner on the way down.
There's a rider on the ground there too, who's being helped up by one of the spectators there, and this is how it is. That's a
very nasty fall.
He actually couldn't control himself. The rider in front of him went down, and he went right over the top.
And the rider who they're saying has gone down is number 67. That is Kurt van der Wouwer of Lotto. Very nasty fall, but he looks okay. But I was very afraid there. He'd gone over the handlebars and into that wall with his head. But he sat down there. The cars are now arriving, and the doctor is there, Gérard Porte, this man who is one of the brilliant doctors who understands the wants of cyclists to carry on. He'll check them out first before he allows them to remount as we swing back up to the leaders now. And this is Paolo Bettini on the lower slopes of the climb up towards the finish, holding his rhythm nicely. All he can do is hang on and pedal and hope that Cardenas or Echeverria, and here's Cardenas coming up on Echeverria. David can go downhill pretty quick, but Felix says, I can climb better than you, and he's coming back up alongside the Spaniard now.
You can be almost certain that this man is thinking in the back of his mind to the victory last year of Ochoa in the Pyrenees, and his brother unfortunately passed away this year after a tragic training accident involving both brothers. And in fact, the one is still alive, but in a hospital, trying to give him the ability to walk and maybe one day ride a bike again. But that is going to be a very difficult situation. He was in a coma for many months, and many people thought that he would actually pass away. Very difficult times for the Kelme squad, and that will certainly be on their minds as they come up this Pyrenean mountain pass.
Now, here we have then the Kelme rider, Felix Cardenas, who is a Colombian, comes up behind the Basque rider, David Echeverria. Watch out for the flags now. You'll see them, the red flags with a white cross on. They are the flags of the Basque country, and they are avid supporters of the Spanish riders. And you bet your life you'll see those flags before the summit today, because they've come across the border in tens of thousands. This is the face of the man who set the pace since kilometre 68 today. He's got 8 kilometres to go to the finish, and he's going to hang on as long as possible. There's the peloton, and thankfully it seems that Devour is okay. With no further news, he looks okay.
And that was a frightening moment for Kurt van der Wouwer, and we have more good news, and it involves helmets. Earlier we saw Bram de Groot of the Rabobank team fell over the barricade, was taken away. We're told that because he was wearing a helmet on that descent, he has suffered merely facial injuries. Great news. And we've got a highlight coming up right now. There are the big boys. Jan Ullrich, followed by Lance Armstrong, who just tossed his hat aside, and Andrei Kovalev have now broken off the front of the peloton as they begin the long ascent to the Plateau de Bonascre above Aix-les-Thermes. Armstrong third, Ullrich fifth, Kovalev second as we began the day. They will battle it out to the top. Once again, here's Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen.
Well, there they are. This is a superb attack coming from Ullrich. In fact, Armstrong was vigilant. He spotted it and joined him. But the interesting move is Andrei Kovalev. Remember, this is the man second in the classification, expected to crack in the mountains, where Armstrong is supposed to move into the yellow jersey, and Kovalev trying to hold them, although he's having a problem.
It is so difficult to stay onto the tail of two of the strongest men in the sport of international cycling. Jan Ullrich today wanted to try and blow this race apart, but he hasn't at all caught by surprise Lance Armstrong. Armstrong sitting on the wheel of the German. Ullrich will feel quite confident today, Phil, because the last time the race came through the Pyrenees like this, he was riding to himself into the yellow jersey. Another problem at the back of the main field, and in fact we're hearing that the yellow jersey of Francois Simon is in serious difficulty at the back of that pack.
Yes, Francois Simon has been dropped from the main field now, so he's 11 minutes in hand over Kovalev, who's ahead of him and just been dropped by the two leaders. He's got 13 minutes on Armstrong, so he's got to get to the top. 11 minutes quicker than Kovalev, 13, or not lose 13 minutes to Armstrong on the climb to keep his yellow for at least one more day. But it looks as though these two riders steadily climbing up once again in the next couple of days to the top two in the Tour de France.
Well, Armstrong and Ullrich separated by 5 minutes. This is the man De Marbe, who was in that counter-attack with Michele Bartoli just a few moments ago, and he will get a chance, a very rare chance, of seeing these two men at the front of the Tour de France. A huge battle now between Armstrong and Ullrich, separated by 5.5 minutes in the overall standings. Armstrong now will just mark the German until we get closer to the summit of this climb, and if he sees the German start to falter, he may well try and increase his lead by a couple of minutes. But right now they are eating into the advantage of every rider up the road in front of them. De Marbe has disappeared. In front of them, not by too much now, is Bartoli and Ivan Gutierrez, and very shortly I think they will make the contact. Armstrong is looking very concentrated right now, kicking his legs over as always at that very high cadence, compared to the huge powerful figure of the man in front of him wearing number 11, Jan Ullrich.
The situation at the front, and our camera's rightly staying here because look, just ahead are two more of the breakaway. That'll be Bartoli. the two chasers, Echeverria and Cardenas, are 24 seconds now behind Bettini. These boys are 2 minutes and 5 seconds. Now, this is Laurent Jalabert here, and Laurent Jalabert is looking to be in a bit of trouble as well. That was Daniele Nardello, champion of Italy, also losing ground. He had a sensational crash on day 2 of the Tour, and he's still very much in the action. There is the maillot jaune, the yellow jersey of Francois Simon. He's got to suffer and hold as long as he doesn't lose 13 minutes to Armstrong, and he shouldn't do that, or 11 to Kivilev. He will stay leader of the Tour tonight, and that's his primary objective, to hold the lead as long as possible. But here comes the train now. Armstrong and Ullrich, the American and the German, ploughing past Bartoli and Gutierrez, and there Armstrong reminding Bartoli, just keep out the way, pal, we're coming by.
Well, actually, Bartoli just made a signal to Armstrong. He saw how fast they were coming up. He was indicating that he needed to pass on the right-hand side, but Armstrong just touching him on the sleeve to indicate he wants to come up on the inside of that corner. And Bartoli must be wondering what he's doing at the front of a col at the moment with the two super champions of the Tour de France. And now it looks very much as if we've got the three leaders, because Echeverria and Cardenas have joined the man that was leading the race from the 68th kilometre, Paolo Bettini, and there he is now.
Well, that catch came so quickly, Race Radio never even got to tell us about it. But there they are, the three are together now. And Paolo Bettini is on the hottest train of the lot, but the Express is on its way up. And it's now a timed, well, it stopped timing. They put a question mark now where the time gap should be. So it's around 1:50 to Ullrich and Armstrong. Here's that incident again. In fact, Armstrong, I think, thanking Bettini there, who acknowledges it. He took it wide. It's rather like a Formula One Grand Prix when you move over for these boys, isn't it?
It certainly is, because they're like two V8s going through there at the moment. Jan Ullrich and Lance Armstrong, super powerful bike riders, the two strongest bike riders in the Tour de France. For this man, it's really a question of survival. Francois Simon wants to hold on to his yellow jersey for as long as possible. This is a 9-kilometre climb, and I wouldn't expect him to lose very much more than 5 or 6 minutes on a climb like this today. But if he pushes himself too hard and he cracks, he will lose all of his time. Echeverria now going off the front in the orange jersey. The reaction coming from the Colombian. The Colombian is Felix Cardenas, and it's all over for Paolo Bettini. His dream of stage victory today for Mappé is out of the window.
Well, even a finish in third place may not be the case now. It's happened at 6.5 kilometres, and the counter has come. Felix Cardenas has just tipped his hat and said, well, if you're going to attack, we can both play that game. And it's goodbye for the moment. The Colombian has flown. Van Echeverria doesn't have any reaction left in those legs. Felix Cardenas for Colombia now, and the Kelme team, which is a Spanish team, is giving the home crowd, which is what they really are, because there's so many Spaniards here, is now beginning to fly. So that is the attack, I think, which should win the stage. But we are receiving confirmation that the Armstrong group is now only a minute behind.
1 minute
So
and 5 kilometres to go. It's going to be so close.
And there is the group. Ullrich has now taken the lead over Lance Armstrong as they drop Paolo Bettini, who led so much of today's stage. The German and the American, both former champions of the Tour, are on the move, on the mountain. Stay with us. Back to live pictures, the final ascent of stage 12 of the Tour de France. Aix-les-Thermes has been left below in the valley. Climbing to the Plateau de Bonascre, Jan Ullrich leads Lance Armstrong, and they are closing on the riders ahead. Once again, here are Phil and Paul.
The face of Felix Cardenas, who is now going for gold in today's stage of the Tour de France. There is a whirlwind race coming up behind him. Will he survive? The time gap at 4.5 kilometres from the finish. Cardenas is 17 seconds ahead of Echeverria and Bettini, and only 52 in hand over Armstrong and Ullrich, while the main field is at about 1:45 to anybody from the field.
This man now is a great climber. That's one thing the Colombians have always excelled at ever since they came to the Tour de France many years ago with the Café de Colombia team and Lucho Herrera. Herrera winning the King of the Mountains competition on 2 occasions. They've always, ever since then, proved that they are great men in the mountains. Kelme really racing on home turf here in the Pyrenees, because looking across the mountains here of the Pyrenees, we can almost see the country of Spain. There is Paolo Bettini just in front of these two chasers right now. He had hoped for an awful long time, Phil, that he was going to win the stage. He will not do that now. And once your hope of win goes, you can see the difference in the pedaling action. He has given up the ghost.
Two riders coming up on the shoulder of Paolo Bettini. Take a good look at them. Paolo first and second in the Tour de France last year, and this is why. Bettini is even trying to lift his pace to catch up on Ullrich. Ullrich is being left to do all of the pacemaking because Armstrong starts today with time in hand over Ullrich. Why should he move until he sees the finish? Back to the back of the main field now, and the race leader, Francois Simon, rather, the younger of the brothers, he is now trying desperately to keep his lead. 2 minutes 55 seconds. He has lost of his lead so far to Kivilev and Armstrong in front.
He's going to lose around about 5 minutes at the end of the day as we look at the back end of the pack. In fact, this is quite remarkable. The man we're looking at here is Roberto Liseca, and he is the man who's riding up to these two men here. This is quite remarkable. This man has been a huge revelation in the past in the Tour of Spain, and he's now rejoined Armstrong, Ullrich, and Bettini seems to have found himself some spare legs.
Just 4 kilometers to go, about 2.5 miles to the top, and it gets no easier than this now. And this is the man, Felix Cardenas, who made a long shot at the win today. Out there on the flatter roads, he's now trying to survive for the victory on what is his speciality, mountain climbing. But you know, these two want everything in the Tour. Now, Liseca has made contact. When he left the peloton, he had with him Yoshiba Bolocchi, but Bolocchi hasn't crossed the gap.
I expected Bolocchi would have liked to get across to this man at the front in the white jersey at the moment, Jan Ullrich, because Bolocchi is looking to keep himself on the podium of this year's Tour de France. Liseca is a magic climber, absolutely brilliant the way he's come across there. But for Bettini, I really do believe it's all over. You'll see the little wave of his hand there saying bye-bye. That is probably Bolocchi there. If it's a pink jersey, it's a long lens there to see if it is. But he will try and ride himself up. It is Bolocchi, wears 21. He's the leader of the Spanish Once squad, which means the pressure of Jan Ullrich has turned off somewhat at the front of this group. Armstrong, for the moment, I think, is just matching everybody else.
And that's a Spanish flag from Alicante. And just to let everybody know back home where they are for the day, and they're on top of the climb at 4 kilometers to go.
I think that further back there was the white jersey of Oscar Sevilla. Now the big attack coming here from Liseca. Now we're going to see if Armstrong can respond, and he just seems to be marking the German right now. I think Armstrong would like to leave the advantage to the Kelme squad at the front. This is the attack right now. These two riders, you see Ullrich looking across. He cannot respond to these kind of accelerations, but normally Armstrong can.
Well, no reason to, because Liseca is exactly half an hour behind Lance Armstrong overall. He's not interested in the stage win. Liseca has been a revelation after his great times out in the Alps, but he's a long way behind in the overall classification. Armstrong is riding his man here. The most dangerous man to him in the Tour de France is Jan Ullrich, and he's keeping him under control. He's probably demoralizing him as well, because he's sitting just behind him.
Well, the time gap between Jan Ullrich and Lance Armstrong in the overall standings is 5.5 minutes. You have to realize that the Tour de France is a 3-week bike race, and it's important to conserve energy, which is probably why we're not seeing a big attack coming from Armstrong right now. He's allowing to the German to set the pacemaking. Behind them, they're putting the gap between themselves and Joseba Bolocchi, who's trying to keep himself in this bike race as finishing number 3 as he did last year.
Well, we're looking at Bolocchi making a meal of crossing the gap. He's having to work very, very hard indeed. He was the odd man out because Ullrich was second in the Tour last year. Bolocchi was third, and Armstrong here won it. And so the top three are trying to get back together again to make it a status quo in Paris. There's the Basque flag, but I'm afraid it's over the top of a German and an American right now, while Liseca himself, a Basque, is trying for the win. And there he is, and there's another Basque flag to cheer him on as well. This is a rider coming to his first Tour de France who's made his name in the Tour of Spain. We never see him race anywhere else of note. He's won stages for the last 2 years in the Tour of Spain, but he's now come to the Tour de France, and he's looking for a win here. He's still got to pick up Cardenas in the front.
Still got to stay off the front of these two riders right now, because he's only around about, I would say, 100 meters. This is the leader of the white jersey competition. Huge revelation. We've seen him ride in the Giro. This is Sevilla. wearing the white jersey right now as leader of the best young rider competition. In front of him, you can see Joseba Belocchi, but all of Spain seems to have come across the border today to cheer on their champions, and they may well be treated to victory. It might not be Spain, it might well be Colombia, but it will be a Spanish team.
3 kilometers to go. Cardenas and Leiseca have gone by. Ullrich and Armstrong are now at 3 kilometers. Sevilla is the boy of the race. He's 24.5 years of age, and he is an absolute sensation, and he's inspired because he's racing on the borders of his own country. He is coming up, and he's joined Belocchi behind now. We go to the front. Here we are with Felix Cardenas now, aiming for his first ever stage win, and he's going to be touch and go whether he won't be caught by Roberto Leiseca.
Well, Leiseca has joined up with Echavarria, but I would think that would only be a temporary move because Echavarria is actually starting to go backwards. But the gaps are very close indeed. In fact, there are only 20 seconds between them. And look at this. Echavarria has found now he's being joined by his own teammate. He's picking up the pace. He's trying to reduce the gap to Cardenas, and he will dig very deep. And, you know, there is the neutral service car. It may well be that Echavarria is going to pull him, his teammate Roberto Leiseca, back up to the tail of Felix Cardenas. It's just a mere 20 seconds separating those two riders, and back it's 20 seconds to Armstrong and Ullrich.
And it looks as though Lance Armstrong is about to give us a demonstration of power here. He's moved over Ullrich. He sensed that Ullrich perhaps was cracking. He's gone to the front, and he's doing some of the pacemaking now. There's the face of Ullrich, not looking as good as he was at the start of the climb, because I think Jan is now going to have to hang on to Lance Armstrong or lose more time. Back up at the front, and we're heading up now to the 3 kilometers to go. No, even better for Cardenas. 2 kilometers from the summit now, a 20-second gap back, and little David Echavarria is trying to launch his climber up to the victory, and it will be a superb victory for a team riding its first Tour de France.
Well, inside 2 kilometers, but there's only around about 1 kilometer of climbing left, because the last 750 meters is actually reasonably flat. This is the second group. Armstrong again moving onto the tail of Jan Ullrich. We're coming to the much easier part of the course. You can see by the fact that just a few moments ago those riders were on their huge chain rings. That will be David Echavarria in front. So now Leiseca has flown the coop. He's out on the sole chase now to try and catch the lone leader of the bike race, Felix Cardenas. This is still the chase behind for 4th and 5th position on the road. That is Belocchi, followed there by the leader of the white jersey competition. That's Oscar Sevilla. They have now caught Echavarria. These two men on the left-hand side of the road are moving up into 3rd and 4th place on the stage.
And the cheers there on the placard was for Jan, and they were jumping with delight. He's just gone by, but now on the opposite side, the cheers for the American flag as he too goes by Lance Armstrong. Echavarria now has had enough of it. He can't take part in this particular battle anymore, as Cardenas versus Leiseca, and then comes Ullrich and Armstrong.
Well, I think Armstrong's accelerated a bit at the back as we concentrate here on the face of Felix Cardenas. He's being chased at 20 seconds by Roberto Leiseca, and he will have to dig very, very deep here. The two chasers now, number 11 and number 1, Armstrong and Ullrich, still locked together in battle. They are very evenly matched on the slopes of this climb at the moment, but I think that's because Armstrong is just controlling the German for the moment. He started the day 5.5 minutes ahead of Jan Ullrich in the overall classification, and he will find that a very comfortable lead. The yellow car just in front there, you can see it. Those are the front riders of this bike race at the moment. That will be Roberto Leiseca.
Now he's seen all the American flags, and that had to do it for him. He thought he'd show everybody back home and on the roadside. Just look at this. He has ripped away. Now with that sort of speed, he's going to run up to that yellow car in front, and that is where Roberto Leiseca is.
That's about 20 seconds, and he's halving that with every pedal stroke right now. This man is unbelievable. He has looked at all of these mountains. He knows this mountain by heart. He's trained over it many times over the last few months. Concentration written all over his face now. He's aiming at that yellow car in front of him. In front of that yellow car will be Roberto Leiseca, and 20 seconds in front of Leiseca will be Felix Cardenas. The German now, Phil, is digging so deep. His face is tortured. He's pulling himself inside out to try and keep as close to Armstrong as he can.
You are looking there at the face of one of the greatest bike riders currently racing. There it is, that of Jan Ullrich. We've never ever seen that face twisted like that throughout his cycling career, which began in 1993 with a World Amateur Road Race title, and last year he ripped them all apart in the Sydney Olympic Games to take the gold medal. And now we're looking here at Lance Armstrong with a kilometre to go, about to hunt down the rider in second place. It'll be too late to catch Cardenas, Colombia, and here he is. It's going to get the stage win. He is heading now towards a 1 kilometre. That's it. He will now continue, hopefully, to victory. He deserves that much out of today's stage of the Tour de France. But Roberto Laiseca better not look over his shoulder, because Armstrong is flying at him.
He's absolutely ripping up that mountain. This man, I hope, now will survive, because we're over the crest of that climb and it's fairly flat now down towards the finish line. He should get there in about 45 seconds for the moment, but he will have Lance Armstrong hammering down upon him, and it will be almost a replay of the stage to Otakam last year, where a rider from Kelme took the stage. On that occasion it was Ochoa, and Armstrong came up and finished second, but put huge time between himself and all of his riders. 400 meters to the finish line for the leader, and it's going to be a great win for Kelme.
Colombia have found themselves a new star. He only turned professional last year, a little bit late in turning professional. He's only ever won 2 races, a stage of a race in France and a stage of the Tour of Spain. Now he can tick off race victory number 3, and what a victory. The stage win on the first Pyrenean mountain stage of the Tour de France. He's almost looking around now. There's the flag of Colombia flying as he comes into the home straight after 5 hours in the mountains today. This is a remarkable win for this man. He had to do it the hard way by breaking away early on, and he's going to give us a very unusual 2-arm salute. Don't fall off, that would be too embarrassing. But a great win, Paul.
I've never seen a victory salute like that before in my life. A brilliant win for Cardenas. Roberto Laiseca is going to survive there for second place on the stage, but Armstrong has put time once again between himself and all of his riders. What's important now is the time differences that he gets over the next men on the road, and Ullrich is digging deep. He's just trying to keep himself in this bike race at the moment. He said he still felt that he could beat Armstrong, but today he suffered again a bitter psychological blow.
This man is on the best form. Even Lance Armstrong says he is at the best form he's ever known Ullrich in, and yet again he has waited and jumped him and taken more time off him. Ullrich will be very disappointed now, even though he's in 4th place and still destined sooner or later for second in the Tour de France. Here is David Echevarria. Keep going, because otherwise you will lose 5th place, but you certainly deserve that. Echevarria racing home for 5th, and a race for 6th and 7th between Sevilla and Bologna.
So with another demonstration of his explosive power after more than 5 hours in the saddle, Lance Armstrong, though he does not win the stage, puts big time into his rivals. Where will Kovalev finish? Beloki has just crossed. Ullrich has just crossed. We'll total it up when we return live to the Tour de France. Live to the Plateau de Bonascre and the finish line of stage 12 of the Tour de France. There at the front of that group is Francois Simon in the yellow jersey, trying desperately to save every precious second he can. Lance Armstrong unofficially 3rd behind Felix Cardenas and Roberto Laiseca, but it's the finishers behind him that count. Here's Phil and Paul.
3 minutes 40 passing by. A Cofidis rider finishing here. Looks like Cuesta, but there is no Kovalev. So he too is losing time. In fact, it was David Moncoutier who just came tacked onto the back. He was one of the early attackers today. It looks as though Kovalev, Paul, having going with that group. Here's the yellow jersey. He'll be the race leader. As he comes up, he'll keep his yellow jersey, but he's conceding around about 4 minutes of his lead to Lance Armstrong. Bobby Julich on the right in the green as well. So it looks as though it'll be about 9 minutes now. Armstrong will be behind Francois Simon.
Well, that is quite remarkable, because I would have thought, in fact, Francois Simon would have lost a bit more time than that. 9 minutes now is his advantage over Lance Armstrong. As we look back here at the stage winner, what a great win for him, and that is one of the most incredible victory salutes I have ever seen. The first time a man goes across the line standing up and saluting the crowd.
Not recommended to be tried when you're riding a bike at home, because it is a most dangerous maneuver. Had he fallen off, there'd be about 150 million television viewers around the world would have fell off the seats laughing. But as it was, he won the day, and he's got his first win in the Tour de France. Lance Armstrong finishing 3rd today. He's now around about 9 minutes of claiming yellow. Will it be tomorrow? I wonder indeed, because Francois Simon is showing us now he is going to fight till the death to keep that leader's maillot jaune. That's where we are now, right on top of a plateau, and we're still looking for Kivilev to finish. He's taken a real hiding on this climb. We haven't noted him go by. He could have slipped through, of course, but we haven't seen him go by, as riders will continue to finish. And they continue to come in. This is Jaja, who took a packet on the climb as well, but has done very, very well on the climb. We think that Kivilev has finished, as we're seeing the rest of the races coming in.
I have a feeling, in fact, that Kivilev may just have slipped across the line when we weren't paying too much attention with the jubilations of the victory. And I have him crossing the line at around about 3 minutes behind, in about 18th place on the stage. So he, as well, has lost a lot of time on Armstrong, and Armstrong, at the end of the day, should be in second place in the standings. Cardenas is the overall winner, ahead of Lyseca, and Armstrong just 15 seconds behind.
There was the final gaps today. So different at the start of the final climb, wasn't it? And Bettini not even there now in the top 10 across the line. A first ever win for the Colombian Felix Cardenas in only his second season as a professional, and his first Tour de France. Also Lyseca's first Tour de France. Armstrong expected, of course, the climber to attack, and he was absolutely right. Ullrich losing time again. And looking further down here, Stefano Garzelli, last year's winner of the Tour of Italy, getting 11th. Mancebo, the best young rider in last year's Tour, coming home 15th this time. Gonzalez also finishing well in 16th place there. And Kivilev is in, and we're thinking, if Paul has worked it out correctly, and he was an ace at maths at school, that Armstrong is now second overall in the Tour, and Kivilev will have slipped back to third place.
But that's only provisional. We have to wait for confirmation of those results. But a quick glimpse there, looking at his arrival time, 3 minutes 6 seconds behind Armstrong's, behind the winner. That would put him 2:45 behind Armstrong on the day. But what a ride by this man. A victory for Colombia in the mountains. This is certainly their home terrain. They love to perform in the mountains. That's exactly what Cardenas did today. Unfortunate for the 32-year-old man who got second on the stage, Roberto Lyseca, but what a comeback that was for him. And Armstrong in third, Phil, that is a serious announcement that he wants to race all the way through the Pyrenees. But he is still 9 minutes behind Francois Simon in the overall standings.
Well, Cardenas, if he has another couple of days like that, is going to be a real high finisher in Paris as well. And good luck to him, because he's now in his favourite terrain, the mountains. And there he is on the winner's podium as a stage winner. And Kelme will be delighted with their young find now. 28 years of age and a stage winner of the Tour de France, as he now salutes the crowd. Yes, he says, what a great victory.
Great victory indeed. There may even be a little tear in the eye there for Felix Cardenas, who picks up the victory for Colombia, and that is the 8th different country in 12 stages to be represented by a rider at the top of the podium. We'll be back to France shortly. Here is Francois Simon, a very lucky man today. He put in a hard day in the saddle, but he lost all kinds of time to Lance Armstrong. And give him credit. He tried hard at the end to minimize the damage. There are the current standings. Simon in the yellow jersey by just 8 minutes 42 seconds over Kivilev, and then less than a minute back is Lance Armstrong, as he continues to take big chunks of time out of the men ahead of him and put them on the men behind him. Balochi, Ullrich, Sevilla, Gonzalez de Galeano, Botero, Ruz, Serrano, all losing ground to the two-time defending Tour de France champion. So as we get a look at the beautiful vistas around the Bonascre Plateau, let's turn to our Mercury Mountaineer ride of the day, and it must be Felix Cardenas, approaching 5 hours in the saddle. He closed up behind two Euskaltel-Euskadi riders. The last of them, Roberto Lyseca, had charged up the mountain, and then this man, Cardenas, simply exploded. A trademark of a great climber is that incredible explosive ability to get up on the rivet, as the riders say, straight down on the pedals and rocket away from the opposition. And then, putting an exclamation point on his Tour de France stage win, he stood on the pedals. Felix Cardenas picks up a stage victory in the Tour de France for Colombia. That's our Mercury Mountaineer ride of the day. Another great view from above this wonderful ski area. An area in which you can ski into 3 different countries: France, Spain, and Andorra. The rest of the peloton making its way up. We'll take another quick break and return live. Welcome back live once again to the Plateau de Bonascre. Beautiful day. After the way the weather was this morning, it's absolutely incredible that we could have a day like this as we look live on the finish area to stage 12 of the Tour de France, and a big shakeup in the GC. Simon and Kovalev remain 1 and 2. Lance Armstrong now 3rd. Joseba Bellocchi, last year's 3rd place finisher on tour, by 1 second beats Jan Ullrich out of 4th place behind Simon, Kovalev, and Armstrong. Then Oscar Sevilla, the man in the white jersey of best young rider. A spectacular performance for the young Spaniard with the Kelme team. There's some more riders making their way in. There's Stuart O'Grady, is it? No, it's one of the other. Yes, it is. O'Grady from Crédit Agricole, who picked up as many points as possible and then sat back for the final climbs up to the Plateau de Bonascre. And as soon as he can get off the bike and get himself organized, he'll be up on the podium. That's Brad McGee with him, another Aussie. Up onto the podium will go Stuart O'Grady. You see him peeling off. Officials want to get him up there for the green jersey ceremony. It will be back on his shoulders tomorrow for stage 13. As you can see, the Pyrenees go up a great deal higher than the Plateau de Bonascre. There are higher mountains. Will be coming up on tour shortly. This is Oscar Sevilla, rapidly making himself a reputation as a Tour de France contender. Remarkable. A man at his early 20s can do as well as he has. Currently shown in 6th in the overall, 16 minutes 28 seconds behind Francois Simon. And not all that far behind a couple of Tour champions in Armstrong and Ullrich. There's a young man looking at a terrific future in professional cycling, and like the other jersey wearers, he will go over to shake the hands of local officials and VIPs. And now let's get final thoughts from our race calling team, Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen.
So there we are. Stuart O'Grady is on the podium. He's increased his lead in the green jersey despite finishing off the back at the end with his friend Brad McGee. And Stuart O'Grady now has a 13-point lead in the green jersey competition over Eric Zabel. And in all the years he's tried to beat Eric Zabel in this competition, he's never had a 13-point lead over him before, Paul.
And he looks very comfortable. A very easy ride for Stuart O'Grady today, and a very sensible one tactically to eat away at the advantage on the stages when Eric Zabel would think that he was fairly safe in staying in his usual position. But as we look further down the climb, there are still an awful lot of bike riders to finish this stage. It was a very difficult stage over the last 9 kilometers, and quite remarkably, on just 9 kilometers of racing, Lance Armstrong managed to pull back almost 4 minutes on the lead of Francois Simon. He's right now on the coattails of Andrei Kovalev, and tomorrow that is very much likely to change.
Speaking of tomorrow, Paul, it is a tough ride tomorrow, almost 200 kilometers. We go into the next stage of the Pyrenees, the high mountains, and this will be a really difficult ride. I don't think Armstrong would have attacked today unless Ullrich had not attacked, and then he finished it off. There we are, 194 kilometers the ride, leaving Foix, which isn't too far away from where we are today at Aix-les-Thermes, and going to Saint-Maurice-Soulon. Now, high above that beautiful village is the mountain of Plateau, and it is an absolute monster. And if you have the legs and attack on that mountain, then you will gain many, many minutes. And don't you believe that Lance Armstrong hasn't worked that out. On the way, of course, we'll climb the Col de Portillon, the Col de Peyresourde, and the Col de Val-Luron. Vicious climbs themselves, but when you finish up with the climb of the Plateau, you are in real difficulty. This is a most difficult day tomorrow, and one that we certainly look forward to, Paul, I would imagine, because, well, it's an area you raced in your time, didn't you?
Certainly the Tour de France went over that huge climb of Saint-Laurent-Loulan several times. You can see what it looks like. It is unbelievable. Those peaks are really going to hurt, and a lot of riders are going to suffer tomorrow. And I have a feeling that Lance Armstrong will be looking to put in one horrendous attack again. He did a good job today, Phil, by actually putting time again between himself and the two men in front of him in the overall standings. But I was very impressed by the ride of Francois Simon, because he held on to a fair amount of his advantage, but still he lost 4 minutes in just 9 kilometers.
He did. He finished 41st today, 4 minutes 4 seconds down. But you know, when you pull on that maillot jaune, the yellow jersey, you don't want to give it away, and he's now got 3 of them.
He's got 3 of them, and Lance Armstrong really needs to battle over the next 2 days. I think Armstrong would feel a lot more comfortable going out of the Pyrenees with the yellow jersey already on his shoulders. And it's amazing how the US Postal Service team seem to have bounced back. We thought they were falling apart through the Alps, but 2 days of not too hard riding for them with that very easy mountain top time trial. Well, not one of the US Postal riders put themselves into the red zone, and then the rest day, I think, put a lot of morale back into the squad. And now that they've seen Armstrong riding so well, they're going to really ride on the crest of a wave.
Bounce back's the operative word, of course, because Stefan Jørgaard fell off again today, but he was back up near the front towards the end. But we were very lucky that breakaway got away last Saturday, because it's made Lance come back from 35 minutes down to now just 9 minutes from the race lead. That's an incredible clawback in just 3 days of cycling, really. Now, when's he going to take the yellow? Because let's face it, he's going to take the yellow, isn't he?
I think he'll do it tomorrow, because I think Francois Simon is riding on the edge of his ability all of the time. He certainly has changed his approach to riding in the mountains because of that yellow jersey, but tomorrow is absolutely horrendous. Today was fairly easy over the first climbs, and I say that not really wanting to do anything against the bike riders who are out on the course, but it wasn't a tough mountain stage. Tomorrow will be absolutely horrendous.
And what about the next day? Because the next day we go to Les Ardennes, and that is a vicious climb.
That is unbelievable. It's going to be very difficult for everyone. I reckon Lance will be in yellow tomorrow, and if it hadn't been for that 34-minute breakaway a couple of days ago that Francois Simon was in, we already would have Armstrong in the yellow jersey now.
And you know, he doesn't like not having the leader's yellow jersey on his shoulders. He's got the scent of it, and he says the finest thing you can do is ride in the yellow. Ask this man here, Francois Simon. He can be proud now and stand alongside his 3 elder brothers. One has held the yellow jersey, the others, and they've all won stages. He's still got to win a stage, Paul, to really stand alongside them.
Yeah, still has to win a stage, but one thing he's done that the other brothers have not done is this man has been the champion of France as well. That's and that true. Is a great title that he was exceptionally proud of, and he raced in the Tour de France with the tricolour. But he really had to dig deep today, because this man is not a great climber. In the past, he's finished more than 45 minutes behind in the Tour de France. He was very courageous, and he will hold on to that yellow jersey for as long as possible. But I think the writing's on the wall, because tomorrow is going to be a monster stage, one not to miss, because it really is a very difficult climb up to Plateau, and a lot of these riders have not been there before, because the Tour hasn't climbed it for quite a few years now.
Now, on the rest day, which was yesterday, by the way, and when we were in the Alps, his brothers did turn up to cheer him on, can you believe? And Pascal came and shook hands with him at the finish, so did Regis. Paul raced on the same team as Jerome, so he knows the family pretty well. They were very proud of him, weren't they?
Absolutely. They actually got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to drive down to the Alps so they could be there to see him ride up Alpe d'Huez and spend the whole of the rest day with him as well. It's a great family, a family of 7, 4 brothers who all were professional cyclists and all right at the top of the sport. Absolutely remarkable.
Yeah. Well, the Tour de France is going to go on for more than a week yet, and everybody, even here in France, is always talking about the same subject. When will Lance Armstrong take the yellow jersey? Well, Bob, I reckon it'll be tomorrow. So does Paul, but you never know. This is a very strange Tour de France. It might change yet.
No question about that. If there's one constant in this Tour de France, it is its unpredictability. And officially, not since 1993 has the Tour de France climbed Plateau. So a lot of riders in this year's peloton have an experience coming that they have not had before. As for Lance Armstrong, you can be sure that he and his U.S. Postal Service teammates have trained on it. They have scoped it out, and they know exactly which way the road goes. Our friends from French television providing us with some kind of graphic support here. I'm not sure exactly where we're going. So let's tell you about what's happening tomorrow. Before we do, here's a reminder. Be sure to tune in at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. If you've missed any of today's Stage 12, we'll have our afternoon encore rebroadcast of the stage. And also be sure to catch us every evening at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our highlight show in prime time, bringing you exclusive interviews and all the inside stories from today's action on Stage 12. And of course, you're going to want to be with us tomorrow for our continuing live coverage of the 88th Tour de France, stage 13 from Foix to Saint-Lary-Soulan as the riders brave the challenging Claude d'Ade, beginning at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We have assurances from French television. We will have pictures tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. Eastern, and you will not want to miss that. A big day of climbing coming in the Pyrenees. And will Lance Armstrong assume the maillot jaune, the yellow jersey? Hard to say. There are still 2 men ahead of them, and both Francois Simon and Andrei Kovalev, Paul and Phil mentioned, rode very courageous races today. So Lance Armstrong continues his march toward a possible 3rd consecutive Tour de France victory, but he will want that yellow jersey on his shoulders before we get back down towards sea level. And one of the longest runs from the mountains to the Champs-Élysées in Paris that we've ever seen on the Tour de France. A great day today, a great climb at the finish. It's always climbing that makes the Tour de France exciting. Today, our first taste of the Pyrenees. Tomorrow, much more. Will Lance Armstrong throw his cap aside once again and power up the mountain into immortality as a 3-time Tour de France champion? We've got a long way still to go. Be sure to click onto OLNTV.com for the whole gang. I'm Bob Barsha. So long.